So I want you to imagine you are sitting in a coffee shop right now. And if you look around, almost every single person is just staring down at a little glowing rectangle in their hands.
Right. It's like the ambient noise of conversation has just been totally replaced by, the quiet tapping of thumbs on glass.
Exactly. Including you
Yeah.
sometimes. And, well, including me. It really looks exactly like a silent sci-fi movie.
A very quiet, highly focused sci-fi movie, yeah. Where everyone is, they're physically in the same room, but mentally they're just scattered across a thousand different digital worlds.
Yeah, that is such a great way to put it. And that image is actually the perfect starting point for today's deep dive.
Yeah.
Because if you are listening to this, you're on a journey to master the English language, right?
Absolutely.
And you might assume that talking about this modern digital world requires, learning a lot of complex technical jargon.
Oh, like the vocabulary of coding or hardware?
Right. You might think you need to understand algorithms to actually participate in the culture. But today, as your friendly English guides, we want to let you in on a secret.
It's a big misconception because discussing technology in modern English is, well, it's rarely about the machines themselves.
It really isn't.
The real conversation, like the way native speakers actually talk about their devices over dinner or at that coffee shop, it's a complex discussion about human psychology.
Yeah, it's about our daily habits. And our mental health, really.
Exactly. So our mission today is to master the everyday vocabulary that native speakers use to talk about the emotions of technology.
We aren't talking about microchips today.
Yeah.
We are decoding the English language used to describe how those glowing rectangles make us feel.
I love that. And, to do that, before we even look at any specific vocabulary words, we really have to understand the foundational emotional state that native speakers operate from.
Right, because the emotion drives the vocabulary.
That is the essential first step. When you listen closely to natural English conversations, people rarely describe technology in absolute terms.
Meaning they don't just say it's all good or all bad.
Exactly. You almost never hear someone say technology is a flawless miracle, or on the other hand, technology is a complete nightmare.
Right.
Instead, the cultural default is this state of profound ambivalence.
Ambivalence, meaning they feel two very different, often opposing ways at the exact same time.
Precisely. We are constantly balancing this deep gratitude for the incredible convenience of modern tools with a very real kind of simmering frustration over how demanding those tools have become.
Oh, yeah. We love that our phones can translate languages and map our route home, but we totally resent that they constantly interrupt our train of thought with notifications. It's exhausting. It is. It's honestly like living with a highly efficient but incredibly demanding roommate.
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy.
Right. Imagine a roommate who cleans your entire apartment, cooks your dinner, perfectly organizes your calendar.
You'd really appreciate their help.
You would. You realistically could not survive your busy week without them. But, and here's the catch, that same roommate also kicks your door open at 2 a.m. to show you a funny video.
Right. Or they demand your attention when you're just trying to sit and read a book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You love them, but they drive you completely crazy.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. And for you, as an English learner listening to this, understanding this demanding roommate relationship is the key to true fluency.
It really is.
Because if you try to take an extreme pro-technology or anti-technology stance in a casual conversation, you might actually sound a bit unnatural to a native speaker.
Yeah, you don't want to sound like a textbook or a politician. The culture has settled into this gray area.
Yes. Echoing that ambivalence is how you demonstrate true cultural fluency.
Okay, so if we're living with this demanding roommate, how do we begin to talk about our dependence on them without sounding, completely helpless?
That's a great question.
Because I hear people casually say they're addicted to their phones all the time. But it feels a bit dramatic to start a casual conversation by diagnosing yourself with an addiction.
It is dramatic, and that is exactly why the most natural starting point for this conversation relies on a much more neutral phrase.
Okay, let's hear it.
The foundation of modern tech vocabulary is the phrasal verb rely on. To rely on something means to depend on it with complete trust and confidence.
But let me push back on that for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Why should a learner use a neutral phrase like rely on if the reality is that many people actually do exhibit compulsive behaviors with their devices? Why not just own the word addicted?
I get why you'd ask that, but the word addicted carries a really heavy clinical weight.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, it implies a total loss of agency, a medical pathology, or even a deep personal failing.
And you probably don't want to bring all that baggage to a water cooler chat.
Exactly. When you're just making conversation with a colleague, you usually don't want to start by confessing a pathological lack of control. Rely on is the perfect starting point because it removes the personal judgment.
It's just stating a fact.
Right. It simply states a structural fact of modern survival.
That makes total sense. It is an infrastructure term. Like, we rely on electricity. We don't walk around saying we are addicted to our refrigerators or to indoor plumbing.
No, of course not.
We just acknowledge that our modern lives are built on top of those systems.
Exactly. So an everyday example would be when you say, I rely on my phone for pretty much everything these days, from paying for groceries to finding my way around the city.
It sounds so calm and rational.
You're establishing a calm, factual baseline, and the pandemic actually cemented this phrasing. Before 2020, smartphones were still viewed by some as an optional convenience.
Like a luxury.
Right. But today, they are vital infrastructure for everything from banking to healthcare.
So by using rely on, you're setting the stage. You're essentially saying, look, I am a functioning adult participating in society, which means I rely on these tools.
Exactly. But once we establish that very reasonable baseline, we naturally have to acknowledge the dark side of that reliance.
Right. Because once we trust our phones to do everything, we kind of just stop looking away from them.
And this is where the language shifts from neutral observation to, well, slightly uncomfortable self-reflection.
The tone totally changes.
It does. We move from the structural reality to the behavioral side effects.
Which brings us to a phrase you will hear native speakers use constantly. Glued to.
Yes, glued to.
As in, I was glued to my screen all weekend.
I find this phrase so fascinating because it feels like a physical description of a mental state.
It really is.
It isn't just about looking at something. It implies this trance-like, almost magnetic pull. It's like a tragic physical accident, like you're physically attached with adhesive. It is a very vivid idiom, yeah. And the reason native speakers use glued to instead of just saying, I looked at my phone a lot, is because it introduces an element of powerlessness.
But in a funny way.
Right. In a culturally acceptable, slightly humorous way. It functions as a shared cultural confession.
A shared confession. Because we all know the apps are designed by engineers specifically to keep us engaged. They literally want our attention.
They do. So when you say you were glued to your screen, you are subtly acknowledging that you lost a battle against the algorithm.
You're saying the algorithm won today.
Precisely. When someone says they were glued to a screen, the tone is usually slightly apologetic. You might hear someone say, I meant to go to sleep early, but I was glued to my screen scrolling through social media for another 2 hours.
So relatable.
They recognize the behavior is excessive, they're admitting it to you, but they also know you probably did the exact same thing last night.
It's a safe confession because the guilt is totally universal. And actually, that guilt has been quantified for us now, which brings us to the most dreaded metric in modern society, screen time.
Oh, screen time. It's the literal, quantifiable measurement of how many hours and minutes you spend looking at your digital displays.
It's brutal.
It can be. Most modern smartphones now track this metric automatically, and they send you a push notification at the end of the week with your total.
It feels exactly like a digital diet report. It's the technological equivalent of stepping on the bathroom scale, where everyone is terrified to look down at the number.
That diet analogy is incredibly accurate because both involve a struggle with consumption.
The language around it has totally shifted from I spent time on my phone to I lost time to my phone.
Wow, yeah, that's exactly the shift. Tech companies introduced the screen time metric ostensibly to help us manage our habits, but psychologically, it often just functions as a tool for shame.
Oh, 100%.
Conversations about screen time almost always feature a specific, horrified reaction to the data.
The dreaded Sunday morning notification. You look at the report and think, who on earth used my phone for 7 hours on Tuesday? And then the slow, sinking realization hits you that it was, in fact, you.
It is a universally humbling experience. A very natural way to express this in conversation would be to say, I checked my screen time report on Sunday, and I was honestly horrified by how many hours I spent on video apps.
Horrified. I love how dramatic yet common that is. We rely on our devices, we get glued to them, and then we are horrified by our screen time.
That's the cycle.
But we have to ask why this happens. We aren't just glued to our screens because we're watching entertaining videos. There is a secondary, much heavier emotional layer driving this behavior, isn't there?
There is, and it is largely driven by a feeling of relentless societal pressure.
Pressure to do what?
It's the pressure to remain relevant, employable, and socially connected in a world where the underlying infrastructure changes every few months.
Which brings us to our next phrase.
Yes, this exhaustion is expressed through the phrasal verb keep up with.
To keep up with something, meaning to move at the same speed as someone or something else, so you don't fall behind.
Yes, but when applied to technology in English, keeping up with captures a very specific modern flavor of mild exhaustion.
It highlights the cognitive load, right?
Exactly. The mental effort required to navigate constant software updates, shifting social media algorithms, and now the rapid deployment of artificial intelligence tools.
It literally feels like a digital treadmill.
Yeah.
You're running and running, expending a massive amount of mental energy just to stay in the exact same place.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
Like you finally master how to use a specific software program for your job, and the very next morning, the company completely redesigns the user interface.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
It's the worst. So you might complain to a colleague. Between all the new artificial intelligence tools and the constant app updates, it's getting really hard to keep up with everything.
And that exhaustion is so universal right now. Admitting that you are struggling to keep up with the pace of change is actually a really powerful bonding mechanism in English conversations.
It shows vulnerability.
It really does.
But wait, what is the opposite of that exhaustion? If keeping up with the digital treadmill makes us tired, what is the ideal state that society tells us we should be striving for?
Well, the aspirational ideal is captured by the adjective tech-savvy.
Tech-savvy.
Yes, a tech-savvy person is someone who is highly comfortable, competent, and skilled with modern technology. They aren't intimidated by new software. They adapt to it seamlessly.
But the definition of what makes someone tech-savvy must be constantly changing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
20 years ago, being tech-savvy meant you knew how to physically take apart a computer and put it back together.
Right, you were hardware focused.
Yeah. But today, a teenager might not know how a computer's file system works at all, but they can edit a high-definition video on their phone in 3 minutes. Are they tech-savvy?
That is a brilliant distinction. The definition has entirely shifted from understanding the mechanics of technology to mastering the interface of technology.
Ah, the interface.
Yes, and because that interface is always changing, nobody feels 100% tech-savvy anymore. It is a moving target.
So how do native speakers actually use this term if nobody feels like they have fully achieved it?
They use it to place themselves on a spectrum. Very rarely will someone boldly declare, "I am a tech-savvy genius."
That would just sound arrogant.
Exactly. Instead, you usually hear the term used in contrast to a specific moment of failure.
Oh, interesting.
People like to establish that they are generally competent, but they freely admit when they are totally confused by the sheer absurdity of modern devices.
Oh, I feel that deeply. I really do.
You've experienced this.
Oh, absolutely. I consider myself highly competent. I work on a computer all day. But last month, I tried to help my parents connect their new smart TV to their Wi-Fi router. And after 45 minutes, I felt like I had never seen a piece of electronics before in my life. It was completely humiliating.
That is the perfect use case. Expressing that contrast makes you highly relatable.
Right.
So you would say to a friend, "I consider myself pretty tech-savvy, but trying to fix my grandmother's smart TV completely confused me."
It shows you have confidence, but you don't take yourself too seriously.
Exactly.
So, if we look at the picture we painted so far for our listeners, we rely on these tools to survive, which leads to us being glued to our screens,
Right.
resulting in horrifying screen time reports, all driven by the exhausting pressure to keep up with a tech-savvy world.
It sounds like a recipe for collective cultural burnout.
It really does. We desperately need an exit strategy.
And the English language evolved to provide one. Society needed a word to describe the intentional, healthy act of disconnection.
And that word is
Unplug.
to unplug. What I find endlessly fascinating about this word is the linguistic journey it has taken over the last 2 decades. Think about the origin of the word.
Right, it used to be very literal.
Yeah, unplugging used to describe a purely physical, mundane action. You walk over to the wall, grab the thick plastic cord, and physically pulled it out of the electrical socket.
It was an action performed on the machine itself. You unplugged the television so it wouldn't draw power during a thunderstorm.
Right. But today, the television is a flat piece of glass in our pocket. It doesn't have a power cord.
No, it relies on invisible wireless networks and internal batteries.
Exactly. So the physical act of unplugging doesn't really exist in the same way anymore. The word has evolved entirely into a psychological metaphor.
It has. It has become a profound metaphor for preserving mental health and reclaiming human focus.
So how do we use it now?
In modern English, to unplug means to intentionally disconnect yourself from electronic devices, to stop using tech for a period of time. And crucially, it is almost always framed as a positive, healthy choice.
It's a sign of discipline, not a failure.
Precisely.
That distinction is so important. Like if I forget to charge my phone and the screen goes black, I don't proudly announce, I am unplugging.
No, you'd panic.
Right? I panic and say, oh no, my phone died. But if I deliberately turn my phone on silent, leave it on my kitchen counter, and go for a long walk in the park, I will proudly tell my friends the next day, I totally unplugged yesterday afternoon.
Exactly. Using the word unplug signals to the listener that you value moderation. You are actively taking control back from the demanding roommate.
I love that.
So an everyday example would be, I try to completely unplug on weekends sometimes. No laptop, no social media, just to give my mind a break and read a physical book.
But let me ask you this. Is unplugging becoming a bit of a luxury or even a status symbol?
How do you mean?
Well, for many people, especially gig workers or people on call for their jobs, ignoring their phone for a weekend isn't a healthy choice. It's a way to lose their income.
That is an excellent observation. The ability to completely disconnect is increasingly viewed as a form of modern privilege.
Right, like going off the grid.
Exactly. When someone talks about unplugging at a fancy yoga retreat, they are indirectly signaling that they have the economic security to be unreachable.
That makes sense.
However, in everyday conversation, most people use unplug to describe micro moments of boundaries.
Like leaving the phone in another room during family dinner.
Yes. It represents the aspiration of control, even if total disconnection is impossible.
The aspiration of control. I really like that phrase. Okay, so we have deeply explored the sociology behind these terms.
Yeah.
We rely on, we are glued to, we track our screen time, we try to keep up with being tech savvy, and eventually we attempt to unplug.
But understanding the cultural psychology behind the vocabulary is only the first phase.
There's more.
Yes. If you want to truly sound like a native speaker, you need to understand the architecture of how these concepts are sequenced in a real conversation.
Right, because if you just throw these words out randomly, you might sound like you were reading from a dictionary.
Exactly. There is a rhythm to how people talk about this.
So what's the blueprint?
There is a very specific three-part emotional arc of a natural English conversation about tech. If you pay close attention to native speakers, you will notice they navigate from the practical to the vulnerable to the aspirational.
Okay, let's break down that architecture so our listeners can use it. What is step one?
Step one is acknowledge dependence. You establish your baseline. You start the conversation by admitting the convenience of the technology. This is where you deploy terms like rely on and tech savvy.
So it proves you are a rational, modern person.
Exactly.
So I might start a conversation by saying, I really rely on my digital calendar to organize my work week. I like to think I'm pretty tech savvy when it comes to scheduling my meetings.
Perfect. You've established practical competence. Then you seamlessly move to step two. Name the discomfort.
Ah, the confession phase.
Yes. This is the shared confession we discussed earlier. You transition into the behavioral costs of that convenience, usually sharing a humorous observation. This is where you use glued to or screen time.
Okay, so I follow up my first statement with, but lately I've noticed I am totally glued to my phone, even when I'm just watching a movie. I checked my screen time yesterday, and it was honestly a disaster.
Excellent. You have shown vulnerability and invited the other person to relate to your struggle.
It feels very natural.
It does. And finally, you reach step three, establish the aspiration. You close your thought with a strategy for regaining balance. You acknowledge the exhaustion of trying to keep up with everything, and you express a desire to unplug.
So the grand finale would be, it's just getting so hard to keep up with the constant influx of emails and messages. So this weekend, I'm planning to totally unplug and spend some time outside.
And there you have it. That three-part arc dependence, discomfort, aspiration is the hidden architecture of human rapport in the digital age.
It mirrors the exact cultural ambivalence we explored at the very beginning of our deep dive.
It really does.
It is such a brilliant framework because it allows you to connect with the person you are talking to. You aren't just giving them a list of your tech habits. You are taking them on a highly relatable emotional journey.
You acknowledge the good, you confess the bad, and you strive for a healthy resolution together.
If you string those three concepts together, the person you are talking to will almost certainly nod their head in total agreement.
It immediately establishes a shared humanity against the backdrop of the machine. It proves that you don't just speak English. You understand the modern English-speaking psyche.
I love that. So if you are listening to this right now, take a moment to appreciate the incredible progress you've made today. You haven't just memorized vocabulary words. You have explored the psychological and sociological currents that give those words their power.
Absolutely.
You are learning how to build deep, empathetic connections using a second language, which is a massive achievement. The next time you find yourself in a conversation about smartphones or social media, try leaning into that three-part architecture.
Try it out.
Acknowledge your reliance, share your screen time discomfort, and talk about your desire to unplug. Watch how naturally the other person responds to you.
It is the conversation that the entire connected world is having right now.
It really is.
But, as we wrap up our analysis today, it raises a rather provocative question about the future of this vocabulary.
Oh, where are we headed?
Well, we have spent this entire time talking about looking at screens and conceptualizing physical chords, but the nature of technology is changing rapidly.
You mean the shift toward ambient or invisible computing?
Exactly. We are moving toward a world where technology is seamlessly integrated into our physical environments, like smart glasses that look exactly like your normal prescription lenses.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Voice-activated homes where the computer is essentially just the walls of your living room listening to your commands, AI assistants whispering directly into an earpiece.
So the technology is literally disappearing into the background. It is no longer a distinct glowing rectangle that you hold in your hand. It is just the air you walk through.
Right. So the final thought I want you, the listener, to mull over as you go about your day is this. As technology becomes invisible, how will the English language adapt?
That is a great question.
Will we still say we are glued to a screen when the screen is projected directly onto our retinas?
That's wild to think about.
And most importantly, will the concept of unplugging even make sense in a decade? How do you disconnect when there are no screens left to turn away from and absolutely no cords left to pull?
Wow. How do you unplug from a room that is always listening to you? That is a slightly terrifying but incredibly fascinating thought to leave on.
It is indeed.
Well, you have mastered the vocabulary for today, but the language, just like the technology, is always evolving. Keep listening, keep analyzing the culture around you, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.